Public inquiry begins today into what's being called the worst treatment disaster in the history of the National Health Service. It affected thousands of patients who had blood transfusions during surgery or childbirth in the 1970s and 1980s. The blood they received was contaminated with hepatitis C and HIV. Thousands of haemophiliacs were also affected. Around 2,500 people lost their lives as a result. The reason that the blood was so infected is because it came in with a clotting agent called Factor VIII from the United States, some of it made from donated blood, which was infected from donors, including prison inmates who sold their blood. Claire Walton's husband contracted HIV. He died in 1993. She says she was ashamed to reveal what had happened to him.
I told people he had died of cancer, and that was acceptable. And you would have the, sympathetic nod. There was no way in that time. And it's only in probably the last year or two that I start to tell people why he actually died.
There have been previous investigations, but today sees the opening of the first UK-wide judge-led public inquiry with the power to require witnesses to attend. It's a significant moment for patients and their families. They've campaigned for decades to get to the truth. They've always argued that information about the dangers of blood products was concealed. Some claim there was a cover-up involving senior civil servants. Emma Jones is a solicitor representing more than 200 people at the inquiry.
The inquiry has the powers to compel witnesses to attend and to summon the production of documents. And it's vital that the inquiry uses these powers to look at who knew what when and why, when things were known, why weren't steps taken quicker to prevent this tragedy.
Mathew Harris from Brixworth was one of those who was infected with hepatitis C. Mathew's spoken to me before on BBC Radio Northampton about all of this. You discovered that it had happened, Mathew, relatively recently. You discovered it. What was it, about 5 years ago? Is that right?
That's correct, Stuart. Good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for joining us again. So you discovered about 5 years ago that you were infected with this. You received the contaminated blood clotting agent in the early 80s, but you went through a pretty awful time, didn't you?
That's right, Stuart, yes. I was given a course of tablets. I was given 11 tablets a day to take for 12 weeks, and they really did mess me up. I was later informed they was as strong as chemotherapy tablets. I was very poorly with them.
How did you discover what had happened, that you did have hepatitis C? How did you find that out?
I found out one day. I just sat in the consultant's office, and they just came out and said, we're keeping an eye on your hepatitis, and we're monitoring it, and we'll let you know when a suitable medication comes up to eradicate it. And I didn't really understand at the time what was going on, and it was only later on, when I was having to have liver biopsies on a regular occurrence, that it suddenly dawned on me how serious this was.
You now have the all clear, though, if I remember rightly.
I do, Stuart. Yes, thankfully. I took a second course of drugs about a year or so later from the first, and thankfully it did clear up, so I'm really grateful for that.
Now, you and others, of course, have been campaigning about this, A, to get to the truth, but also for compensation for what you've been through. Has anything like that occurred? Have you heard anything about that?
No, there's never been any word in compensation. I mean, there are some ex gratia payments that the government have made that I receive a monthly allowance. But no, nobody's ever admitted liability and given us compensation, which I think is important for those that have lost out, those that have lost out on work and income throughout all this scenario. So, yeah, I do think it's very important.
So that's something you would like to see happen long term. What is it you want to see come out of this inquiry? Is getting to the truth, is holding those responsible to account important to you?
Very much so, yeah. Whoever these people are or were, however high in office they stood, if it does come to the fore that they knew about it and it was swept under the carpet, then these people have got to be brought to book. They've messed with so many people's lives, and if this could have been halted at the time, then thousands of lives would have been saved. And a lot of people wouldn't have had to gone through what me and many others have gone through.
Indeed. The inquiry opened this morning. It's been opening statements and will be for the next day or two with some evidence, but they next come back in the spring, and the whole thing is likely to take between 2 to 4 years, they reckon, before the final conclusions are reached. It's going to be another drawn-out period of time for you, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately, and unfortunate to say, I think we will probably lose more poor souls that have been infected over this time. But I do appreciate that these things can't be done overnight, but let's just hope they get it sorted out as soon as possible. And
at least I was going to say, sorry to interrupt you, I was going to say at least you've got to the point of this inquiry, which is, I know at one stage you thought was never going to happen.
That's right, yes. I must admit I'm really made up that we've got to this stage. Like you say, there's been umpteen other inquiries that have not really got anywhere, that's cost a fortune. And let's just hope that this does bring some results. And I think it will, to be fair. I really do think we'll get somewhere this time.
Mathew, thank you so much for coming on. Very good to talk to you again. Mathew Harris from Brixworth, 4:30.